Megam, COGS field correspondent and private investigator, here, and I'm on the streets looking to check out the trading scene and get a few answers to some heavy questions. Boy, is it tough down here. Everyone seems to be out for themselves. Fortunately, I met two people willing to exchange a few words with me. Let me introduce Ms. Josephine Trader, a produce buyer for an American grocery store chain, and Mr. M.T. Broker, a former trade analyst of a company that went belly up after the executive made a few unethical decisions, and now makes his living as a street cleaner and reusable procurement specialist.
Hello.
Hello.
Let's talk a little bit about the WTO. Does it pose a challenge for state sovereignty?
Well, Magnum, I suppose that would depend upon your point of view.
What do you mean?
You see, since every member state receives a vote on the WTO, they can technically work together and shape the organization's rules, so they do not violate national sovereignty. Yet this will make them weak through rounds of compromise and harmonized processes. The real trick is to get on the good side of a developed nation. The United States or the European Union would be good, although India or China might be ones to watch in the future.
So having allies in the WTO is beneficial? How does that keep the playing field level?
Actually, it is level on paper, but reality tells a different story. Because so many things are reached by consensus by way of the green room, the WTO is not as balanced as it is designed to be. I tell ya, the only green fact about the green room is that all the recycled egg package sweeteners and threats passed down to less developed states in exchange for their support on particular trade issues.
So that is how the US and the European Union are sheltering some of their industries.
Oh, we don't like the word shelter. Reminds us of taxes, and nobody wants to be referred in the same group as tax shelters. Think of it as turning off the spotlight of unwanted attention. The WTO is a good platform for multinational corporations or MNCs. It is so focused on promoting trade through the elimination of protectionist measures like tariffs and other trade-related boundaries, and ensuring equal rights, that it is like having your own vice president of new markets and legal advisor all in one institution for the private sector. It is great. We get access to cheap labor capital, plenty of raw materials, and the technology to put it all together. All MNC executives have to do is connect all the dots to produce the cheaper goods to satisfy the customers and collect their paychecks.
Is that not only half the story, MT Broker? Are you forgetting those lower wage workers are often working in poor environmental conditions due to lack of regulation and barely make enough to support themselves, much less a family? Don't these people have rights? Children should not be working, they should be in school. The International Labour Organization, ILO, should be more involved on trade-related labour issues. Furthermore, we should be pushing these transgovernmental organizations to form an integrated international economic system that links trade, labour, and the environment. If we are to preserve the resources you previously mentioned, environmental monitoring and regulation must be enacted. I do not think everyone attends the Church of the Almighty Dollar.
I think you are confusing me with someone who cares. Even though I live on the streets, I do not subscribe to your hippie, bohemian logic. I still support the free trade model that is reinforced by liberalization and deregulation. Most of those states realize their low-wage labor force is their competitive advantage as they attempt to attract the MNCs. Additionally, those workers are receiving a source of income and often some form of education through work training programs that may never have been offered to them, if not for the MNCs. Those children are helping feed their families and smaller siblings. Sure, they are not receiving as good of an education as we enjoy in the more developed states, but they are surviving, and hopefully paying attention to our lessons. Become the best you can be, better than anyone else. Make sure someone notices you, and finds your skills to essential, and you will succeed. Perhaps the child may not break into a higher level financial, but the opportunity for social
You are insane to think that corporations care about the bottom of the ladder. In fact, Nathan Jensen's contribution to Race to the Bottom asks if corporations' incentives offset the costs of the relocation. Essentially, forget the lower-level team members who endure to make the corporation grown. As soon as the operating environment becomes more favorable, due possibly to even cheaper labor, tax subsidy incentives, and government guarantees, the MNC will up and move. Very few do not follow this practice, and have made agreements on certain standards, such as the Kimberley process regarding the sale and certification of African diamonds after the blood diamond situation.
There you go, splitting hairs. The Kimberley process was voluntary and successful, which is exactly what I'm attempting to achieve as part of our agenda. You want rules and laws and stacks of document taller than you to tell you how to do business? Fine, but watch and see what happens when you put too many bureaucrats in one room together.
Oh, I know, the only way to get anything done and maintain satisfaction is to harmonize on policies. Also, Mr. MT Brooker is hinting that harmonizing follows David Vogel's myth about trading up. It would be a long and arduous process that would ultimately result weaker legislation and agreements. Harmonizing does not necessarily mean a step in the right economic development direction. Not if watered-down policies fail to do what they were tasked to achieve. Take for instance the International Court of Justice. Like any other court, they are tasked to issue rulings upon cases brought before them. Enforcement, however, is performed by the Security Council, which almost never happens. Even the environment is seen as a barrier to trade, as more and more people are becoming involved with natural preservation. Will the WTO begin ruling against green eco-friendly protectionism, if it is seen as a wrongful opportunity cost?
Harmonizing is the best way, but great care must be taken. It isn't always a ratchet up for the people.
Yes, I agree. Harmonizing also brings together ideas from the leadership, but beware the spread of best practices. While some methods for development might work, in say for example when economist Jeffrey Sachs used shock therapy to jumpstart the Bolivian and Polish economies, it failed to work in Russia. Different situations will require different tools. This cookie-cutter stuff will not work. Attempting to rehash previously used techniques without a complete understanding can easily backfire.
Got a problem with best practices? The private sector thrives on them. Copy what works to improve one's own systems and if feasible, add your own flavor to make it better. Best practices are a way of life, and belong in every manager's handbook.
Sure, just like the IMF told the Southeast Asian countries to use its best practices of cutting interest rates and austerity. Good thing not all the countries rolled over, else South Korea might not have emerged at the rate it has today. Not every practice is a best practice.
Alright, do I need to split you both up? Thank you for your time today, and enjoy your holiday.